Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Judicial Opinions and Common Law video. This video is part of the Legal English Writing Online class. So in this class, what are our learning objectives in this video? We'll talk about generally just appreciating how judicial opinions create law through precedent. And along with that, talking about how the judicial opinions carry varying amount of weight and authority. Then we'll talk about reporters, using reporters to look up the court cases. And we'll, at that point, dive into Westlaw. We'll look at the cases. We'll look at and explain the West key numbering system and basically kind of generally look at Westlaw to find cases and evaluate cases and how we're using that case research generally in the larger research that we're doing. So in another video, we learned that constitutional provisions and statutory provisions have language that is too broad. We have regulatory laws that are also maybe not as broad, but they haven't been interpreted with specific facts that are unique to certain situations. So the judiciary kind of serves as the interpreter of the law. And so courts will issue their interpretations of the law as opinions, judicial opinions. And what these judicial opinions do is then create the precedent, basically the lasting legal norms that will last. Some people use opinions or refer to cases as cases. Some will refer to them as opinions. We'll use both cases and opinions to mean kind of the same thing. Kind of the difference being is if there's a panel of judges, sometimes not all the judges will agree. And so you'll have like the majority opinion and the minority opinion. And with the majority opinion being kind of the strongest form of the case. You'll also have individual judges that might disagree, and they will write a dissenting opinion. And similarly, there might be a judge that agrees with the outcome, but for slightly different legal reasoning. So she might issue a concurring opinion to kind of explain his or her opinion in maybe a slightly different manner. Another kind of unique aspect is the fact that judges might join opinions of colleagues. So if there's a dissenting opinion, it might be joined by other judges. Same thing with a concurring opinion, might be joined by other judges. So this is all to say that we have the majority opinion, but if you're trying to craft an argument, or you're trying to craft an argument that would be kind of an opinion contrary to maybe an argument that your counterpart is making in court. So you might, that is just, all of this is to say that as a researcher, we need to pay attention to all of these opinions: the majority opinion, dissenting opinion, concurring opinions, opinions that are joined by other judges or not joined. These are all important salient aspects of our research. So opinions are then issued, and once they're issued, these act as precedent for subsequent opinions in later courts. And this is kind of what in the legal field we call the common law, right? The judge-made rules that come from these opinions. They're what we generally refer to as the common law, which is kind of, there's a little bit of a caveat there, a little bit of detail there. The common law can also develop through from a statute or constitutional provision because of a standard kind of interpretation of that constitutional provision or statute. So judge-made rules in general exist independently of constitutional or statutory interpretation because they are articulated by judges. So where do we find these cases? In general, you'll find them in what's called case reporters. And these reporters will have the cases kind of organized according to their own conventions. One of the most popular is the West. This gentleman West systematically collected appellate level opinions and then published them in these multi-volume sets and called them reporters. So West Publishing continues to publish most of the American case law, and Westlaw is obviously one of the tools that's come out of this system, this multi-volume system. So what kind of reporters do we have? Basically, they are kind of organized by regions. So in West's regional reporters, you'll see the Pacific reporter, the Northwestern reporter, the Southwestern reporter, Northeastern, Southern, Southeastern, and Atlantic reporters. You'll see some other kind of reporters, but this is kind of basically the basic idea of splitting up the cases into regions. And so with these different regions, you'll have different citations. In the citation, it's kind of like what you might think of it as like the code citation, right? The same citation as a statute. The citation for a case begins with a number, then it's preceded by an abbreviation, then ends with another number. So what is the first number? The first number is the volume of the reporter in which the case appears, right? The abbreviation tells us which reporter contains the case. And then the final number is the page, the specific page of the reporter that the case starts on. So, for example, you'll see usually the name of the parties of the case, and then a number followed by the abbreviation, then another number, and then followed by, it could be the court that is deciding the case, and then followed by the year in parentheses. And we have another video on Blue Booking that will talk about this in more detail. So some abbreviations and reporters. So if you have the U.S. abbreviation, this is the United States reports. This is, you'll know without a doubt that it's the United States Supreme Court, the official version. If it's S.CT., it's a Supreme Court reporter, and it's the U.S. Supreme Court, but it's the West version. We have the Supreme Court reporter that's the LexisNexis version as well. And this is the LED reporter. If it just says F, it's the federal reporter. So you'll see it with the federal courts of appeal. F SUPP, it's the federal supplement. And this is where you'll find federal district courts. Now, for the different regions, you can look at Blue Book to see the different reasons, but the abbreviations for SO, Southern Reporter, it's Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, etc. Pacific Reporter. You can check online to see how these are split up. You have N.E, Northeastern Reporter, Northwest Reporter, Southeastern Reporter, etc. And I suggest that you consult with the Blue Book. That's a valuable tool to find out how to abbreviate, or if you're not sure what an abbreviation means or refers to, check out the Blue Book. So using a case, getting into the case. And now we'll check out Westlaw. And here's Westlaw. So first you can, in your, the first page here, you can basically go to cases and see the cases split up. You can see all federal cases, all state cases. You can see the federal cases by court, U.S. Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, district courts. We have bankruptcy courts, the tax court, the CIT, etc., military courts. You can click into federal cases by circuit. So the 11th Circuit, D.C. Circuit, federal circuits. Or by case. So you can check out cases by state. And by topic. So we can see if we want to see cases by a specific type of case or topic, that we can browse by that. So if we look, we'll pick the 7th Circuit. This is the circuit from Indiana. We will see cases. We'll see U.S. Supreme Court cases. You're asking, is the U.S. Supreme Court in the Seventh Circuit? What it's doing is all cases that have come from the Seventh Circuit. We'll discuss it here. So you can also, so the district in the Seventh Circuit consists of a couple of states. You can drill in on one state, so you can see all the cases that have come out of the districts in Indiana. Same thing by the state cases. So these will be state court cases. And so, for example, they split it up between the federal state court cases and the state court cases. I guess I should say federal cases that relate to Indiana, the specific state that we're the example here. And this would be the state cases that are from Indiana. So we can see the Indiana Supreme Court cases. And what it'll do is just list out all the cases coming out of the Supreme Court by date. So this is kind of just a way to browse. Now, if you're interested in topics, you can click into a topic, and it will show you the cases coming out of that relate to this particular topic. And then within this topic, you can search within Admiralty and Maritime cases on the search bar. So now let's go back. You can also search by topics and key numbers, and we'll drill into this when we look into a specific case. But basically what Wes does is split it up into all of these topics. Right? And within these topics, for example, election law, there are subtopics, right? And if we just choose one of these, what happens? Well, no documents found. That was a bad one. Let's see. We can see which cases contain that topic in the head notes. So that's another way of kind of do some research. So, but if we go into just kind of our regular search, and in another video we talked about unmanned aerial vehicles. Export. Let's see what happens. So in our general kind of search terms, you'll come with this. You'll see over here the different sources that have come up, and at the very top here there's cases. So if we click on cases, we'll see all the cases that come up based on this particular unmanned aerial vehicles and export search term. So there was a case in 2006 from the United States Court of Appeals from the Fourth Circuit. Let's just see what's going on there. So what you'll see here is kind of the background, or kind of the summary, the holding, what the judges held here. And then it starts with the head notes. And this is what we saw before in the first page right below the cases link. So these are the head notes. And so this is kind of the topic here, the larger topic, the subtopic, and an explanation here of what's happening. And this one has quite a bit of head notes here. That's a lot, 37 head notes. And with these head notes, what you can do is you can click on it and it'll go to the place in the case where you see the head note and the language that the court is actually discussing. So going back up. And then it goes into the opinion. What you can also do is download the original, and this is the original from the reporter. So you'll see kind of the same here, the parties here, the background. This would be the previous case in the reporter. Then the holding here, and then it'll go into the head notes, the same as the electronic version. And then this lists the attorneys, the judges, and then the opinion. So this would be the kind of original version that you would find in the actual hard copy reporter. So another thing you'll see is this little flag. What the flag does is tell you if there's been any negative treatment about the case, whether it's been overturned or whether it's been interpreted differently, or whether just another case has discussed it somehow. So you'll definitely want to check this out. If it's a yellow flag, that it's more like a disagreement called into doubt. A red flag might mean that the case was overturned somehow. So you would definitely want to check that out. But when we click on that, we can see all the cases, these 3 cases, and the kind of treatment involved. So disagreement, recognized by this case, called into doubt, or distinguished by this case. You can see the date, that it's a case, and the depth of treatment. This is something that Westlaw does to tell you what kind of the depth of treatment, the depth of negative treatment that's involved. And these are interesting too because it talks about specifically what's being called into doubt is likely this head note, right? So, and these are the head notes that we saw in at the beginning of the case. So if we check that out, it'll go to that head note so we can see kind of what's going on in that particular head note. Another valuable tool would be, you can see the filings by the parties. So you can see the reply brief, the answers, etc. So you can drill into kind of the specific arguments. We can see the negative treatment again. The history of the case. And this is nice because it gives you a nice little graphical representation of what's going on. Citing references, this is nice too. So what basically this is saying is this is looking forward into the future. Who is citing this particular case? Right? Is it a case? Is it a petition? Is it a brief? A motion? So who's citing the case? Table of authorities is nice because it's kind of a listing of the cases that's relied upon as authority in this particular document. So another nice thing that Westlaw does is if you are, if you want to quote, let's say this language, it'll ask you to save to a folder. You can add a note. You can highlight this, or you can copy with the reference. And then when you paste it, it'll paste the material and the pin site for you, which is nice. So you'll know, you'll be able to be citing correctly. I've noticed it's not perfectly in Blue Book form a lot of the times, but it'll get you in the ballpark. So that was the cases. Again, we talked about kind of specific topics too, that you can use to search, and the subsequent treatment, and the weight you can give. I think that's all I'd like to talk about in this video. Thanks, everybody, and take care.